There is a kind of wound that leaves no blood, no visible scar, no broken bone, and yet it can kill kingdoms, destroy empires, and shatter the human spirit more completely than any sword ever forged. That wound is disrespect. You know it already. You have felt it burn under your skin. The colleague who interrupts you mid-sentence, dismissing your thought as if it carried no weight. The friend who mocks your effort, disguising contempt as humor. The family member who looks at you with quiet condescension, silently declaring you are less than they are. No blow has been struck, but something inside you fractures. And here is the danger. If you do not address it, that fracture grows until the entire structure of who you are begins to collapse. Niccolo Machiavelli, the man often described as the patron saint of ruthless realism, would not dismiss disrespect as a minor social irritation. He would call it for what it is, a contest of power. In The Prince, he warns rulers that if they allow contempt or mockery to flourish unchecked, they will soon find themselves despised. And when a ruler is despised, rebellion is inevitable. Disrespect is not simply about words, it is about perception. When someone disrespects you, they are broadcasting a message to the world. You are weak. You can be ignored. You can be used. If that message spreads, your authority, your reputation, your dignity begin to decay. Look to history. Long before the Senate's daggers tore through his flesh, Julius Caesar was already bleeding from invisible wounds. Senators whispered about him, dismissed his reforms, rolled their eyes at his ambition. Caesar tolerated the small slights, believing his victories on the battlefield would silence his critics. But every ignored insult was like water dripping on stone. It carved away at his image until the final betrayal became inevitable. When Brutus struck, it was not the beginning of his downfall. It was the conclusion of years of tolerated disrespect. And yet, not all who are mocked fall. In our own age, we find the opposite example in Elon Musk. For years, experts laughed at him. They mocked the very idea of sending rockets into orbit, sneered at the fantasy of electric cars dominating the market. Disrespect was constant, merciless, and public. But here is where Musk followed Machiavelli's playbook. He did not beg for recognition, nor did he crumble under the weight of mockery. He absorbed the contempt and turned it into fire. He became lion-like in presence, unyielding in his vision, fox-like in cunning execution. Today, many of the same voices that mocked him now kneel in admiration or envy. This is the lesson Machiavelli whispers from the grave. Disrespect tolerated is poison. But disrespect transformed into fuel becomes power. Still, most people don't transform it. They endure it. They excuse it. They tell themselves that ignoring disrespect is maturity. That silence is strength. But this is a dangerous lie. There are two kinds of silence: the silence of strength and the silence of fear. One communicates control, the other communicates surrender. The tragedy is that most people confuse the two, and by the time they realize their mistake, their reputation is already gone. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you let someone cross your boundary because you didn't want to make a scene? How many times have you swallowed an insult, telling yourself you were taking the high road, when in truth you were simply afraid to confront it? Machiavelli would laugh at our modern obsession with being liked. He would call it a weakness that rulers, leaders, even ordinary people cannot afford. For him, the question was never, will they like me, but rather, will they respect me? And respect, he insisted, is built not on kindness, not on endless patience, but on the perception of strength. Imagine yourself as a ruler seated on a throne. The throne may be small. It might be your office, your household, your circle of friends, but it is a throne nonetheless. If you allow even one advisor to mock you openly, if you allow even one subject to defy you without consequence, you have sent a message. The throne is weak, the crown is cheap, the ruler can be tested. Once that idea takes root, rebellion begins. And in life, rebellion takes many forms. People ignoring your opinions, undermining your authority, using you for their advantage, all because they no longer take you seriously. The same law applies to everyday life. When you let your time be wasted, when you allow your ideas to be dismissed, when you tolerate ridicule disguised as humor, you are not keeping peace. You are digging your own grave. You are teaching the world how to treat you. But here lies the paradox. The answer is not blind rage, not screaming louder, not overcompensating with false bravado. Machiavelli warned that cruelty without calculation breeds only hatred, and hatred topples rulers faster than disrespect ever could. The answer is clarity, an unshakable presence that communicates, "I will not tolerate what diminishes me." This presence does not always require words. Sometimes the most devastating response is silence, but the silence of strength, not fear. The silence that makes others uncomfortable because they feel your refusal to bend. The silence that forces others to question themselves. That is the silence of the lion. And yet, clarity also requires cunning. You must learn to discern between disrespect that demands immediate correction and disrespect that is better used as leverage. To crush every insult with brute force is to waste energy. To ignore every insult is to invite decay. The art lies in knowing when to roar and when to smile like the fox. This is why Machiavelli remains as relevant today as he was 5 centuries ago. Human nature has not changed. People will always test limits. They will always push boundaries. They will always see how far they can go before you resist. If you do not resist, they will keep pushing. If you resist poorly, they will turn hatred against you. But if you resist with clarity, lion and fox combined, they will respect you, even if they never love you. So I ask you again, what kind of silence do you practice? The silence of fear that erodes you, or the silence of strength that elevates you? Think carefully, because the answer will decide not just how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. And if you cannot command respect from yourself, you will never command it from the world. Disrespect is not lightning from a clear sky. It does not arrive suddenly, without warning. It is a seed planted in the soil of human nature. And Machiavelli, the cold anatomist of human motives, studied this soil with ruthless precision. Human beings are opportunistic by design. From the time we are children, we test boundaries. A child asks for 1 piece of candy, then 2, then 3. If the parent says nothing, the child takes more. If the parent hesitates, the child pushes further. It is not malice, it is human instinct. Adults are no different. Employees test how much they can slack off before their boss reacts. Friends test how far they can joke at your expense before you snap. Lovers test how much neglect or manipulation you will endure before you walk away. And here is the truth. If you do not draw the line disappears. History is littered with rulers who failed to grasp this. Louis XVI of France is one such tragic figure. He was not toppled overnight. His fall was not a thunderclap, but a slow erosion. Each hesitation, each concession, each failure to assert his authority taught France that the king's word meant nothing. The nobles sneered, the people mocked, the revolutionaries sharpened their knives. By the time the guillotine blade fell, Louis had long since surrendered his crown through the accumulation of tolerated disrespect. He did not lose his head first. He lost his presence, his authority, his respect. Now contrast this weakness with the burning resilience of Steve Jobs. In 1985, the Apple board humiliated him. stripping him of power within the very company he founded. It was a devastating dismissal, one of the most public acts of disrespect in modern corporate history. Jobs could have disappeared, a fallen prodigy mocked as arrogant and finished, but he did not accept their verdict. Instead, he built Next, revolutionized Pixar, and prepared himself for a return that would make Apple kneel. When he came back, he did not come as the boy wonder desperate for approval. He came as the emperor, commanding not just a company, but an entire industry. The same board that dismissed him now bowed to him, proof that disrespect can either destroy you or forge you into something undeniable. Machiavelli would point to these two men and say, "Here lies the spectrum of human fate." On one side, Louis XVI, paralyzed by fear of conflict, drowning in concession, undone by weakness. On the other, Steve Jobs, hardened by rejection, returning as a lion disguised in the skin of a fox. Which destiny will you choose? But it is not just kings and CEOs who live this truth. It is all of us, you, me, the people who surround us every day. And modern psychology reveals just how dark this truth runs. Consider the infamous Milgram experiment. Ordinary men and women were asked to deliver electric shocks to another person whenever they gave a wrong answer. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. They heard screams, pleas, cries of pain, yet most continued to deliver shocks, escalating them to lethal levels, simply because a man in a lab coat told them to. This is the brutal reality. Most people will push further than you ever imagined as long as nothing stops them. Human beings are not naturally self-limiting. They only stop when they hit a wall, when power, resistance, or consequence forces them to. Do you see the connection? If you allow small disrespect today, tomorrow it grows. Just as the participants in Milgram's experiment kept turning the dial, people in your life will keep testing, keep pushing, until you decide enough is enough. It is not that they are monsters, it is that human nature itself is wired to push limits until it meets resistance. Machiavelli understood this long before science confirmed it. In The Prince, he warned that rulers who tolerate contempt invite rebellion. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because cruelty is noble, but because boundaries enforced with clarity prevent chaos. Better to draw the line early than to wait until disrespect metastasizes into revolt." Ask yourself, how many times have you excused someone's behavior thinking it would stop on its own? Did it stop or did it grow? The seed of disrespect sprouts in small moments, when someone talks over you, when someone mocks you in front of others, when someone ignores your presence. If unchecked, it becomes a tree with roots so deep it tears apart the foundation of your authority. Louis XVI proved that when you let small cracks spread, your kingdom collapses. Steve Jobs proved that if you refuse to accept humiliation, you can turn exile into a stage for your return. The Milgram experiment proved that most people will keep pushing until you stop them. So here is the brutal lesson. Disrespect never stops on its own. It grows until you stop it. And the question that should haunt you tonight is this: where in your life are you allowing the dial to turn? Who is pushing further because you have not drawn the line? And what will happen when they decide to push it one notch too far? Machiavelli, ever the ruthless observer, did not simply diagnose the disease of disrespect, he prescribed weapons to fight it. And he gave us two, the lion and the fox. To command respect, you must be both. The lion represents power, presence, and the ability to instill fear. The fox represents cunning, adaptability, and the art of deception. One without the other is incomplete. A ruler who is only a lion is predictable, easily trapped. A ruler who is only a fox is clever but fragile, easily crushed. But when lion and fox combine force and cunning, strength and subtlety, you become untouchable. History shows us this duality in action. Consider Cesare Borgia, the very man Machiavelli admired above all others. Cesare faced betrayal from his own lieutenant, Ramiro de Orco. He responded with lion-like ferocity. He had the man executed and left his mutilated body in the town square. The message was unmistakable. Betrayal would be met with brutal consequence. Yet Cesare paired this with the fox's cunning. After displaying the corpse, he declared himself the savior who had rid the people of a cruel subordinate. The same act that terrified his rivals won him the admiration of his subjects. Lion and fox perfectly intertwined. Now look at the modern stage. Angela Merkel, often underestimated at the start of her career, quietly embodied the fox for years. She was patient, cautious, unthreatening, slowly maneuvering through the male-dominated world of German politics. But when crises struck, economic collapse, refugee influx, European turmoil, she revealed the lion. Calm, unyielding, immovable. Merkel became Europe's anchor, not because she shouted, but because she mastered when to be fox, when to be lion. She earned respect not from charisma or theatrics, but from presence and timing. Yet here is the danger. Most people fail at this balance. They become trapped in one role. Some roar like lions at every slight, exhausting themselves and turning admiration into resentment. Others slither like foxes, too afraid to ever bare their teeth, and are quietly consumed by wolves stronger than they are. The art lies in knowing which mask to wear and when. But what happens when the herd itself turns against truth? When disrespect is not just individual, but collective? Modern psychology gives us the chilling answer. The Asch conformity experiment revealed how fragile human conviction really is. Volunteers were shown simple lines and asked which matched in length. The answer was obvious. But when actors in the group deliberately gave wrong answers, most real participants followed, denying their own eyes. They chose the comfort of the herd over the clarity of reality. Think about this. People will betray truth itself just to belong. They will call black-white, up-down, right-wrong, if enough others around them do the same. Disrespect thrives in such environments because if the crowd mocks you, few will defend you. If the group decides you are irrelevant, even truth will not save you. This is why Machiavelli warns, you cannot rely on the herd for respect. Respect must be imposed through presence and cunning. If you are not lion enough to stand apart, you will bend with the herd. If you are not fox enough to recognize the trap, you will be bent without even realizing it. Ask yourself, how many times have you stayed silent in a group, even when you knew the truth, because you feared ridicule? How many times have you laughed at a joke at your own expense just to avoid standing out? That is the herd bending you. That is disrespect metastasizing through conformity. Machiavelli would sneer at such weakness. He would say, the crowd does not respect its members. It respects only those who rise above it, who refuse to bow even when outnumbered. And here lies the paradox. Standing alone is terrifying. The risk of rejection is high, but the reward is respect, because others secretly long for someone strong enough to resist the herd. The one who refuses to bend becomes the standard by which the herd judges itself. Look again at Cesare Borgia. He was feared, yes, but he was also respected because he acted with clarity. Look again at Merkel. She bent when strategy required patience, but when the moment came, she stood immovable, and nations rallied to her steadiness. This is the essence of Machiavellian psychology: to wield both lion and fox, to resist the herd when it mocks, to create respect by combining fear with admiration. So the question is, when disrespect comes not from one person, but from the many, will you collapse into conformity? Or will you become the lion that makes the herd tremble? Disrespect from strangers is painful but survivable. Disrespect from rivals is dangerous but expected. Yet the most lethal form of disrespect comes from those closest to you: family, friends, lovers. Because here, the wound cuts deepest. It is not only your pride that is injured, but your very sense of belonging. Machiavelli would warn, sentiment cannot outweigh sovereignty. If you surrender your standards for love, you will lose both. Respect and affection must coexist, but if one must be sacrificed, Machiavelli insists it cannot be respect. For once your dignity is compromised at home, it will crumble everywhere else. History confirms this ruthless truth. Henry VIII of England was not a man of patience, but he understood one thing with brutal clarity. He would not allow his crown to be mocked. When the Pope refused to grant him a divorce, Henry did not tolerate humiliation. He severed ties with Rome, dismantled centuries of authority, and built the Church of England. Whatever one may think of his morality, the political lesson is undeniable. He refused to bow. He enforced his standards, even when it meant war with the world's greatest religious power. In our own time, look at Oprah Winfrey. She built an empire on trust, authenticity, and presence. Yet she too faced disrespect from those around her. Partnerships, executives, even close allies sometimes tested her boundaries, attempting to exploit her name without her consent. Oprah's response was consistent and decisive. The moment someone crossed her line, she cut them off. No, pleading, no second chances, no erosion of her standard. She preserved her empire not by endless compromise, but by enforcing non-negotiables. And in doing so, she sent a message the world could not ignore. Her crown was not for sale. Here is where most people fail. They excuse disrespect from loved ones because of sentiment. They endure betrayal because of history. They allow neglect because of fear of loneliness. But every time you do this, you lower your walls, brick by brick, until nothing remains to defend you. And once your inner circle disrespects you, why should anyone else respect you? Standards are not spoken, they are lived. Every action teaches people how to treat you. Every compromise signals weakness. If you laugh at a cruel joke meant to belittle you, you have lowered your standard. If you accept neglect in the name of patience, you have lowered your standard. If you beg for attention rather than withdraw it, you have lowered your standard. Modern psychology reveals why this is so dangerous. In the infamous Stanford prison experiment, ordinary college students were divided into guards and prisoners. Within days, the guards became sadistic, humiliating, and abusing the prisoners. They stripped them of dignity, forcing them into submission. The experiment had to be stopped early because it spiraled into cruelty too quickly. And what was the cause? Power unchecked, standards unenforced. Human beings, when given the chance to dominate without resistance, will almost always take it further than you think. This is why Machiavelli insisted, if you allow contempt, it will grow until it consumes you. Disrespect is not static. It expands to fill the space you allow. The same is true in relationships. If you let your partner speak over you, ignore you, or diminish you without consequence, the behavior will not stop. It will grow. If you allow family members to mock your dreams, to dismiss your achievements, to trample your time, they will not stop. They will push further. Because human nature, when unchecked, becomes ruthless. Machiavelli would tell you, your heart may ache, but your sovereignty must remain intact. Love without respect becomes dependency. Family without boundaries becomes prison. And friendship without standards becomes exploitation. So here is the challenge. Tomorrow, if someone you love disrespects you, what will you do? Will you stay silent? Will you confront them? Or will you walk away? And if you stay silent, ask yourself, was it the silence of strength or the silence of fear? This is not a question to be answered casually. It is the question that defines your life. Because the way you handle disrespect in your closest circle sets the tone for how the entire world treats you. Do not deceive yourself. Kindness alone will not save you. Endless forgiveness without consequence only teaches others that your worth is negotiable. To protect your dignity, you must sometimes sever chains, even when it hurts. Henry VIII. Cut ties with Rome. Oprah cut ties with allies who crossed her, and you must be willing to cut ties with those who repeatedly wound your crown, no matter how much history binds you. For in the end, standards are your fortress. Without them, you become a prisoner in your own life. Every kingdom falls when its ruler forgets who they are, and every life collapses when the individual forgets their worth. The final weapon against disrespect is not cruelty, not constant battle, but the crown of self-respect. For without it, all strategy crumbles. With it, no force on earth can dethrone you. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome. Surrounded by court politics, betrayal, and constant wars, he refused to let disrespect unsettle him. In his private writings, what we now call meditations, he reminded himself daily, no insult, no mockery, no contempt could harm him unless he consented to it. His self-respect was his fortress, and it made him untouchable. Centuries later, Nelson Mandela endured 27 years in prison, stripped of freedom, mocked by his oppressors. By all logic, he should have been broken, yet he emerged not as a victim, but as a ruler of himself. His dignity was not eroded by chains, it was sharpened by them. When he walked free, he carried a presence so powerful that even his enemies could not ignore him. That is the power of self-respect. It transforms the powerless into the untouchable. And this is the truth Machiavelli would force us to confront. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you hand over your crown. Every time you betray yourself for the sake of peace, you sell your throne. But the rebuilding can begin in a single moment, the moment you decide your worth is not negotiable. Imagine walking into a room with that certainty. You do not beg to be seen. You do not plead to be heard. Your very stillness declares, I know who I am, and I will not shrink for you. People feel it. They may not love you, but they will respect you. And respect, as Machiavelli understood, is worth more than affection. Here lies the paradox. When you stop chasing respect, it comes to you. When you stop pleading for value, others begin to value you. Self-respect is magnetic. It reshapes the way people perceive you without you uttering a word. So I ask you now, do you think Machiavelli was too ruthless, or was he simply honest about the nature of power? Leave your thoughts in the comments. This channel is for those who dare to see the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. If you are ready to claim your crown, subscribe to Ruthless Psychology. You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to rule. First yourself, and then the way the world treats you. This is the crown of self-respect. Wear it, and no one can take it from you. Take